Some years ago, I was at a leadership retreat and we watched a TED Talk about finding your why. Basically, it was about how knowing what motivates you makes you a better leader.
By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist?
Once you know your why, it becomes like a personal mission statement. Jon Snow had a why that shaped his entire life. I believe his why was motivated by him being a highborn bastard. He grew up with privilege, and despite having the acceptance of his father and most of his siblings, he never quite felt like he belonged. This feeling would be exacerbated by his stepmother Catelyn's pure dislike of him. She could not accept him, even though she had long forgiven Ned's betrayal. She even tells the story of how he became sick as a baby and she prayed to her gods to save him because she felt so guilty for hating him.
So I prayed to all 7 gods. Let the boy live. Let him live. And I'll love him.
He survived and somehow still didn't earn the empathy of his stepmother.
And he lived. And I couldn't keep my promise.
So Jon had this natural urge to prove himself worthy of being a Stark because he was a bastard. He chose to prove himself in the Night's Watch because his uncle was a ranger with them, so he wouldn't be separated from all the Starks. Plus, I believe he must have felt a certain way about starting his own family as a bastard. His children would never be equal to their cousins. They would grow up feeling the same way he did.
Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you.
So in the Night's Watch, he could prove himself as a Stark next to his Stark uncle and wouldn't have to worry about how a potential family would fit in his world. So with everything he did it through the lens of being Ned Stark's son.
And you are a Stark. You might not have my name, but you have my blood.
Instead of a "what would Jesus do" bracelet, Jon would have a "what would Ned do" one. Ned was Warden of the North. He was responsible for the lives and livelihood of everyone who lived in the North, which was the largest territory in Westeros. So when Jon joined the Night's Watch, he wanted to be a ranger, just like his uncle, and actively protect the North from the hated wildlings. But a few things would happen that would change his original objective. First, he would be utterly disappointed when he did not earn the role as ranger in the Night's Watch and instead became a steward, like his friend Sam. He was so insulted because he knew he was the best fighter and he looked at stewards as men too weak or too clumsy to fight. But eventually he realized that the Lord Commander saw something in him that no one else yet saw, that he was more than just a fighter. He was a leader.
Now listen to me. The old man is the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. You'll know everything, be part of everything. And he asked for you himself. He wants to groom you for command.
Lord Commander Mormont saw his potential and knew he would be wasted as a ranger fighting petty squabbles with wildlings.
Called Longclaw. Works as well for a wolf as a bear, I think.
My lord, you honor me, but I can't.
Oh, you can. And you will.
And it wasn't just because he was a Stark, because his uncle Benjen joined long before him and was just a ranger. Lord Commander Mormont saw that Jon was special. I believe he realized what Jon's why was. By this time, it had expanded beyond himself, and it included Sam. He befriended Sam, taught him how to fight, and took up for him so that Sam could belong. Although when he first befriended Sam, it wasn't with the purpose of proving himself worthy as a Stark. It was with that underlying feeling that pushed him to prove himself, wanting to belong. Sam wasn't a bastard. In fact, he was his father's heir, but he did not measure up in his father's eyes because he was not a great fighter. So his father illegally disinherited him and sent him to the Night's Watch so that he could make his younger son the heir. So Jon was able to relate to Sam, even though Sam exasperated him in the beginning. Another thing that would form his new objective was when Castle Black was attacked by a white. It was Jon who discovered the only way to kill them was to burn them. Seeing a dead man walk and realizing there was more going on north of the wall than just wildlings trying to get over it caused the Lord Commander to lead a team north of the wall to see just exactly what was going on. At one point, Jon is captured by the wildlings and learn exactly why they're trying to get over the wall. Eventually, he would take the position that his role in the Night's Watch was more than merely protecting the North from the wildlings. It was to protect all of Westeros from the Night King and the Army of the Dead. When he originally joined the Night's Watch, it was to gain some sort of glory as a ranger, to prove himself as a Stark. He even had a very brief opportunity to be officially made a Stark by Stannis Baratheon.
Pledge me your service and you'll rise again as Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell.
Who asked him to take back Winterfell from the Boltons and become Warden of the North, like his father Ned. It was all he ever wanted. But I believed he turned it down not only because he believed Westeros needed him more, but because he knew deep down it wasn't what Ned Stark would have done.
But I have to refuse you. I'm Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. My place is here.
Ned Stark would stay and fight the Army of the Dead. He was a second son. He was never supposed to be the Warden of the North. But his father and older brother were murdered by the Mad King. And he had to step up, become the Warden of the North, marry his brother's betrothed, and join his best friend Robert's rebellion in order to get his sister back. Ned Stark was not motivated by glory, and Jon chose honor over glory, as Ned would have done.
You're as stubborn as your father, and as honorable.
I can imagine no higher praise.
His new objective was still motivated by his why. It was still to be worthy of being a Stark that led him to save all of Westeros. Because really, Jon, more than anyone, could have said, screw the world, let it all burn. He was in the impossible position of being a rich, illegitimate kid who had all the privilege, but none of the power of his family. His family by this point had been scattered to the winds, and the person most important to him, his father, had been murdered by the king. But by choosing to continue to live his life by his father's example, he decided it was on him to save the world. He did waver for a moment after he was murdered by his own men and brought back to life by the Red Priestess.
My watch is ended.
But he soon realized that he needed to continue on with his new objective, or he might as well have stayed dead. So after Sansa and Littlefinger regained the North for him, he continued proselytizing about the coming doom.
The war is not over. And I promise you, friend, the true enemy won't wait out the storm. He brings the storm.
There was a moment of glory when the Lords of the North declared Jon King of the North. He, of course, was touched that they trusted a bastard to lead them. Yet it was another moment where he focused on what was needed rather than what he wanted, which led him to Daenerys Targaryen's door. He needed her help to fight the war for Westeros. She was skeptical at first, but just like Lord Commander Mormont, just like the Lords of the North, she saw him as a dedicated leader. And Jon saw that she and her dragons were sorely needed to fight the war in the North. When she risked her life to save his, he saw her as more than just another person fighting for the Iron Throne. He saw her as a partner in his cause to save Westeros. And just like him, she was fighting to belong in the land where she was exiled from. So he dedicated himself to his cause and to Daenerys, all the time motivated by his why to prove himself as a Stark. Then he discovers his whole life was a lie. He is not Ned Stark's son. He's not even a bastard.
Your mother was Lyanna Stark. And your father Your real father was Rhaegar Targaryen.
He is Aegon Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne.
You've never been a bastard. You are Aegon Targaryen, true heir to the Iron Throne.
He is a Stark by blood. His mother Lyanna was a Stark. The first time he cheated death was when Ned claimed him as his bastard to keep his best friend Robert from killing him. So, his whole life, he wanted to prove himself as a Stark, of being worthy of being Ned Stark's son. And in actuality, he was his nephew and the rightful king of Westeros.
You're the true king. Aegon Targaryen, 6th of his name, protector of the realm, all of it.
The woman he now loved so much was his aunt. In this moment, his why was obliterated. He continued with his objective of saving Westeros, but after the long night was over, he was kind of lost. He no longer had the personal stigma of having all of the privilege and none of the power. Like Ned, after Robert's rebellion, he could have been king if he wanted to. Ned, of course, chose not to be, but Ned was no longer his father. Rhaegar Targaryen was his father, but he didn't know Rhaegar. Everything he had ever heard about him was a lie. With his why pretty much destroyed, Jon's motivation shrunk from saving all of Westeros to supporting Daenerys. He never took the time to process what his newfound identity meant to him or his life. Eventually, it shrunk even further to protecting his sisters from Daenerys.
And your sisters? Do you see them bending the knee?
In the end, when he is released into the north with the wildlings, or free folk as he calls them, all of his objectives were accomplished. He no longer needed to prove himself as a Stark. His new why was just to be free of everything he grew up thinking was so important and just live amongst the free folk. Jon's why influenced every decision he made in his life until it didn't matter anymore. Do you wish that when Jon discovered that everything he thought of himself his whole life was a lie, we could have at least explored Jon's emotions about that? Are you waiting to see what they are when the books are finally released? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to know the next time I upload or go live. Thanks.